Sometimes a video game is truly perfect, and Mario Smash Football is one of those cases. Americans know it as Super Mario Strikers, and I'm kinda happy they use the word strikers and not the other dreaded word that starts with an S that some people call the sport. You got zero ball knowledge if you call it that. Mario Smash Football is a game where everything was done perfectly on their first try, and to this day it's still the best Mario football game, for me, which there aren't many of. That's the one thing that always surprised me. We got tennis or golf on basically almost every system, but the biggest sport in the world, only 3 entries so far. Probably because they have a different developer, since these games aren't made by Camelot, who are responsible for the other sports games. They also made Golden Sun back in the day and I really miss it, but instead they're made by Next Level Games, who actually do belong to Nintendo nowadays since they got bought in 2021. It's just pure love. There's nothing I can complain about in this game. It's arcade football perfection and will forever be my number one. We were blessed with football games during this generation. Pro Evolution Soccer 4, 5 and 6 for the realistic football enjoyment, and when you just wanted to have the craziest football available, you could play this. Pick your favorite Mario character from a roster of only 8, which is a little low but nobody cared, and have the time of your life. What makes it so good is that nothing really matters when it comes to picking things. All the characters are basically the same with a few minor differences that change like hitboxes, but overall they play the same. No stat system or anything like that. It doesn't really matter if you pick Peach or Donkey Kong, on the fundamental level they're the same. For some that's probably not a good thing, but for me, I love it when games keep it simple like this and you don't have to worry about picking the perfect parts for a vehicle like how it is nowadays in Mario Kart. Sure, it adds depth into the game and it's a good thing that different characters actually do play differently, but there's that portion in my head that just thinks everything should have the same stats. It's what makes the game completely competitive for me, when everyone has the same playing field. I don't want to be forced to pick that or this character just to have a better chance of winning, because they are just straight up better since the meta dictates that. There can't be a meta when everything is the same. It's the raw skill that matters, but you don't fully need skill for Mario Smash Football, I would say, to a certain degree. Sure, knowing when to try to dodge a tackle helps a lot, and also knowing what are the best spots to shoot from help you, but there's always a small bit of luck in the game depending on how well your goalie feels like. Even my dad was able to beat me sometimes, not in a bad way, and he played no games at all pretty much. He would never be able to do that in Smash or Mario Kart, despite people saying they're great for casuals unless I try to play worse. If you play those games at full strength, it's basically impossible to lose against beginners. Here, that isn't the case. The game makes it possible by being extremely simple because your character does not matter and every button does one thing: A for passing, B for shooting, R for running, X for items, B for normal tackles when not having the ball, and Y for hard brutal tackles. Those are the main buttons, but there's also the L button for lobs when passing or shooting, but those are not truly required, they just help you out. There's also the super shots or hyper strikes or whatever you want to call them when you keep the shot button pressed with your captain, which then activates it if you're not interrupted and have to hit the green line. Did you know that the first line does matter? You don't need to hit that, just ignore it. Only the second one counts. It will always be 2 goals if you hit the green bar on the returning line. I have to say though, we always turn these off. They allow you to have an easy comeback since they count as a double goal, but we always just felt they're kinda lame. Sometimes it feels like people actually forget how scary a controller nowadays can be to someone who doesn't actually play games. So many buttons to press, and then you would have to press 2 buttons at once even. Sounds simple enough for you and me, but people that never or rarely play them, that's hard. And then the goalie also helps a lot sometimes. He could be an absolute god at times and save 25 shots, and then one shot after he lets through the most normal unhard shot of all time and makes you lose the game, which just feels fantastic, unironically, if you're playing with friends. It's a joy to just laugh it off and see that big smile on everyone's faces after having such a heated match. For people who really do love to not lose, it could be hell though, to lose such a match. And there's not much more to say about the game except that it's just super duper fun. It's fast, it's simple, it's chaos, it's mayhem, it's perfect for what it is if you only look at the gameplay. It's bare bones for sure, but more about it later when I compare the content of each game to each other. There's that somewhat infamous quote by Miyamoto about F-Zero, or games in general. Why would people want a new game in that franchise when it has barely evolved? Good question, Mr. Miyamoto, who allowed way too many new Super Mario Bros. Games to be made because at least those sold well. Not every game needs to be changed with a new gimmick or anything like that. Sometimes all you need to do is give people more. Make the same game kinda, but with more and new content without trying to change it too much, because that can ruin things. Yes, I'm saying this because Mario Striker's Charge was one of those cases where different didn't mean better, but worse. Not to say it's a bad game, but it destroyed the essence of Mario Smash Football. It overcomplicated things to a point where it was just too much, and some of my more casual friends didn't want to play it after a bit. They turned the ball into metal. Everyone kicking this ball should actually break their feet. Every time you pass the ball or charge a shot, it evolves into a different color from red to orange to yellow, and at its maximum output, it turns white. If you try to shoot when the ball is red, it will barely fly and your passes also won't be that great. But if you shoot when it's white, it will most likely will at least get to the goal. It slows the game kinda down because you gotta pass around, and most likely you will do that in your own half, because otherwise your opponent could easily intercept them. This mechanic just feels so lame. I wanna instantly shoot and do crazy shots, but instead I'm kinda forced to pass around boringly. It's one of those ideas that in your head feels kinda wow, this could be cool, but then when you actually use that idea you realize after a bit that it's not so good. Everything just feels like, yep, how can we give this a gimmick and pump the game full of them? Stages now have stage hazards like random stuff flying across the stage or thrombs falling down onto you. Every captain character now also has their own special skill that you can activate if you get the item for it, like Peach taking some selfies and sending her enemies to the Shadow Realm. And even the sidekicks get their own super strike basically, where if you hold the shoot button for long enough, they start doing their special skill, like Shy Guy riding into the goalie on a bullet bill and stunning him so you can easily score a goal if you catch the rebound. Added to that, the characters also now have completely different skill sets depending on who you pick, which I already kinda complained about earlier, so you actually have to think about who you take for your team, since it's important. You can go for heavy characters that have a lot of power in their shots, but they're always slow, so maybe you won't even get to the ball if you only pick those. But the very worst thing that they added was also giving these sidekicks another special skill that you can activate by pressing the D-pad. Some of them have a fairly normal action like Monty Mole digging a hole to hide in, and I wish everyone would have gotten something dumb like that, but no, instead we got two of the most broken characters ever created because of their skills. Let me demonstrate how the usual match online looked like. Yep, just a bunch of Wybones teleporting into the goal because that's his special skill. Why? He can't do that in any other game, and Daisy and Waluigi can do it too. Who came up with this? Why did they think that they have to add teleportation? Did no one ever find out that this is way too strong during playtests? It legit ruined the game's online mode because it was just this. Out of 10 matches, you would maybe get one person trying to play normally and not doing cheesy stuff like this. In real life, I could at least punch my friend if they did stuff like that over and over, but online, no way to stop it except not letting them have the ball. And that's not even the worst. While bounce travels faster the more charged the ball is, so you can kinda just try to interrupt the enemy trying to charge it, but there was Boo. Boo was allowed to basically do the same thing without having to charge. Feast your eyes on this high quality footage. Boo is a fast character, and if you learn the perfect timing to do this here, there's almost no way to stop it. You had a fantastic day at school, wrote some good grades, maybe found a girlfriend or boyfriend, adopted a kitten right after, your parents love you, everyone admires you, so you should feel great, but you don't. Why? Because after you entered your room after such an amazing day, you decided to play Mario Striker's Charge Football online and were matched up against someone running a team full of boos, and decide to immediately turn off your Wii and curse Nintendo for not doing patches during this era of gaming, because this just ruined the whole game after a few weeks after release when everyone found out about it. It felt great though to be the person running a team like that sometimes. That's just how it goes for most multiplayer games or competitive things in general. People find the strongest way to play it and it becomes less fun. At least other games have patches and change the game. Here there was nothing to be done about it and it ruined the game. That's why I love Smash Football so much more. Everyone has the same playing field like I said, because it doesn't matter what you pick, so a meta can't even develop. For others that may sound lame, but I prefer it that way. The whole time I was playing it to capture footage, I just sat in front of my TV and thought, wow, I really wish I would be doing something else right now. That didn't happen with Smash Football, because even if you're all alone and just playing against the CPU, it feels so fast paced, full of excitement, chaos, boom boom crash. Here, that excitement didn't come through, and that's also kinda what happened back in the day with it to me and my friends. After grinding online together for a few weeks because we were able to play with two players online on the same console and seeing dry bones and boos teleporting into goals and goals and goals, we just gave up on the game. The online was the only reason for us to play this over Smash Football, and whenever we wanted to play against each other and not against someone else online, we just used that game instead. Since that day, I also never really returned to this one. For me, it's a game that I never need to play again, except for when I want to make a video on it. It wasn't a total disappointment because I still had fun with it, and it's not a bad game at all, like I said, but for me, it just had too many gimmicks. One thing I didn't quite understood with Mario Strikers Battle League was how many people complain about not having enough content, and I'm like, yeah, that's kinda what you're used to when being a fan of the Mario football games. In the first one you got a bunch of cups, in Charge you also have a bunch of cups, and a challenge mode with 12 challenges that are basically just, hey, Mario is down 2 goals, score 3 goals to win, yay. And now in Battle League there's a bunch of cups. What did people expect? I know, that does not excuse it, and nowadays people are also just fed up with the way Mario sports games were on the Switch. Nintendo launches it, keeps back some content, then slowly do some patches here and there to add maybe one new mode, maybe 2 new characters here and there, and then end the support. I have to say, for me that was totally enough. I never played these games for the single player stuff, except for Mario Tennis on the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. Those are really damn great with the story mode since they feel like cute little RPGs actually, but nowadays no Mario sports game has a single player that is worthwhile, and I don't see that changing. What I want is just great gameplay so I can play and grind it online. I got Rosalina in a Smash football game, and that's all I needed. Got even more than that though, because it was a return to its more simplistic roots. No more charging up the ball, and sidekicks don't really exist anymore with their gimmicky skills, but instead every character is a captain now, basically, and has their own super shot. Instead of just charging up your shot to shoot it, you have to wait for an orb to appear and pick it up, and now just do the usual super shot stuff, and it's an easy 2 goals for you. Some other minor changes, like being able to tackle your own teammates into item boxes or into enemies, that add an actual tactical way to play the game without being too overbearing. Someone who can do such tackles is obviously gonna have a bit of an upper hand, but it's not totally game breaking. For me, this should have been my dream game, while it was probably a nightmare for Charge fans that were just wondering where all the gimmicks from that game went. Sadly, there have been 3 big mistakes that next level games did. They messed up the whole online system at release. You know what I hate? A game not letting you play it. Ranked matches were basically only on the weekends, and why? Whose idea was that? I don't want to wait for a specific date so I can actually earn points for it. I want to get points all around the clock and not just play meaningless casual matches while I wait for the weekend. And if you just wanted to play by yourself, you were also getting screwed over, because if you made your own club and were the only person inside of it, you weren't allowed to pick your own team really. You had to pick from a random group of characters each match instead of the game giving you the whole roster. So if I wanted to main certain characters like Rosalina and bought gear for them, it would sometimes happen that I wasn't even able to pick her because the game just said, hey, your own fault for not being in a club full of other people. Why? Why am I getting punished for not joining some random stupid club with people I most likely won't even know? Why can't I just have my own club, my own kid? Like, I want to customize my own kid. I want to name it. I want to do my own stuff. Why do I have to be punished for being a loner? They eventually added a normal ladder a few months after release for solo players, but at that time the game was already pretty much dead. Why wasn't it in the game from day one when even Charged had that? Every single other online game that Nintendo has it. You go online in Mario Kart and drive around and either you win points or lose points. You go online in Smash Bros and easily pick a match where you can lose or win points. Why wasn't it here? You messed up your own game by leaving out the most important mode an online game can have nowadays. A normal solo queue for you to play in where you gain points. It ruined everything not having it in at release and forcing you to join stupid clubs and only getting points on the weekend. It already took like 2 minutes to find a match, sometimes a few weeks after release, because people who bought the game already stopped playing it, and the bad word of mouth probably scared people off, so new players were also uncommon. I have no idea how the online looks like nowadays, because I didn't want to spend a few bucks to subscribe to the Nintendo Online thing, but you most likely will only get matched against ultra super duper pros who never left the game and get the daily dopamine from crushing noobs. The second big mistake was turning the game more clean. Charged and also Smash Football had a dirty look to them. Stadiums were ran down and sometimes had cool looks to them that make you think they're not fully fitting into the Mushroom Kingdom, but that's what made it so good. It was a totally new look for Mario, a bit edgy, a bit cool, but still charming. In Battle League it's just kinda gone. All the stadium parts you can choose are basically super pretty and look like they just bought them from the newest construction store. The fields are basically all just grass, which makes sense for FIFA, but even FIFA 98 had an indoors mode where you can play on wood. So if FIFA from 98 has more variations of ground to play on than a game released in 2022, even though the other games also allowed me to play on something like wood, metal and other things, why is there only grass here? Why did they decide, hey, you only can play on grass now, yippee? Through all these things combined, it just lost its earlier visual identity. No, it's just football in the Mushroom Kingdom. No weird stadiums, no crazy stadiums, just the same stadium that you can give a different look to. Same goes with the music. Instead of having original songs for the game like in the other two, they just thought, hey, wouldn't it be super cool if we just take the tracks everyone has heard 1,000 times before like 1-1 and turn them into rocky remixes? Something everyone has heard before since back in the day, that was its own genre of YouTube videos where people metal fight songs from Nintendo. The remixes are great and all, but it takes away Striker's own identity and just Mario-fies everything yet again though. And my third complaint about the game would be changing out the cool quirks in the go with the lamest, dumbest, stupidest Mario enemy of all time. Boom boom. Why this guy has to show up in every single Mario thing nowadays just ticks me off. He was fine in Mario Bros 3, but he should have never been brought back. I hate him a lot, but I talked too much about him in my other video that was basically about these games called My Biggest Nintendo Disappointment. If you like hearing someone lose their mind over something as silly as Boom Boom, then I would recommend you to watch it. I will link it here if I don't forget it, because watching all the videos of mine is a little bit embarrassing. I just hope Nintendo will learn from this, but since most of my complaints were about the online mode, I'm a bit skeptical. Nintendo and online just doesn't mix too well, but hey, never give up hope. Who knows what the future brings? It's gonna be hard though for Nintendo to appeal to both kinds of Mario football fans. People who like the gimmicky way of charge and people like me who prefer the more simplistic way to play it. As long as Nintendo just does not make us wait that long again. The 15-year gap between Charge and Battle League was way too long. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the video and will have a happy rest of your day, or a good night, or anything good that fits your time zone. Bye bye.